that's pretty good. And yeah, just the wait and see, format. We haven't increased our pricing as of yet, but having the looming effect of possibly having to, it's challenging because it's not like our customer dollars are increasing. It's not like everybody's getting raises or anything like that. So we really have to be cognizant, of that, but not compromising, just our premium material. Like we're never going to make anything that's less quality just to try to get some money, because that would hurt us down the line.
A
So we're
hundred
just,
percent, a
yeah.
hundred percent, and that's what everybody's trying to figure it out. How much can we
Hmm.
consume on a brand side, right? So
Right.
that we don't really give too much effect onto the consumer side,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to take years before the consumer can actually catch up with the inflation and increase that's going to happen.
Definitely,
A hundred
definitely.
percent. And now, are you guys, just out of curiosity, and this is a really hot topic for everyone now, are you guys
Hmm.
now, because you do have manufacturing in Italy, are you guys
Hmm.
exploring any opportunities where you ship the materials from Asia to Italy, and then from Italy you do the full ensembling and then shipping it here?
Yes, that is a we actually just had a stakeholder meeting with that specific setup. Um, a lot of our eyewear manufacturing in Italy, they've had conversations with us regarding just having specific things made there, and then they could ship it here like per order, as far as
Mhm.
like pre-sales and things like that. And exactly, what you just mentioned, as far as like having kind of like that roundabout aspect of like that's really important. We've had conversations even with our China manufacturers too, just because everything is produced in small batches. So instead of having a couple hundred shipped over to the U.S. as a normal shipment, just whenever someone buys something like that could be an option. But we've placed just everything just on hold to really see um, what customers think regarding specific releases. Like, what is it that they want? Like, we don't, we cannot stress how important it is to really get things that they want and really keeping it within a modern minimalist wheelhouse, just within our cultural aesthetic. Because we can't just say, okay, well, this is what we've had, to produce. As far as like we wanted to give like a more concrete example, we were looking to design Bluetooth eyewear,
Mhm.
and the um, overall setup outside of the U.S. as far as the materials, the cameras that's built into it, like all of that was built better in China and in Italy.
Right.
And so now all these things happen, and it's just like, yeah, we could do it here, but it won't be as good. Like
Mm.
we can't risk that. So we've had those conversations with stakeholders and with customers. Like we can't risk, a rollout and you guys get it and you don't like it, or you get
Exactly.
it and it flops, or you get it and it sits, because then it's sitting, and then all of a sudden we do get a few sales and something like that. It's crazy. And just one more thing, just as far as store placement, we've been very um, hesitant really with that, just as far as like the wholesale part is concerned, because obviously we would lose money there, because they buy at cost or a little bit more at
Right.
cost, but they buy in bulk. But it's like you want to make sure that you keep that relationship going, but where we can't ship out as much. So it's been crippling really for small businesses. I recently read something that there was a letter that was written to the White House that hopefully small businesses will eventually be exempt from tariffs, but we'll see, because this is an interesting time. I
It
see the
is
point, but
It is
it,
definitely an interesting time, and
mhm.
it really puts at risk a lot of the small businesses who are going to unfortunately rely so heavily on those quick shipments that are coming from overseas and be able
Right.
to do small quantities, and now they will unfortunately not going to be able to sustain themselves. So it's definitely going to put a big, huge stress on the industry itself overall. 100% in agreement with you on that, and it really echoes what Samuel just said earlier before you joined, is that to rebuild something in the United States that we have lost over decades is going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But the good thing about it is to think about it, at least it's a movement in the right direction, right? So that this gives us a chance of nearshoring and bringing things home, closer to home. However, it will take time, and the question is, what kind of an impact that will go through on the brands of doing new releases, which, our recommendation to all of our clients right now is pause anything new. Just refocus on how we can be able to sustain the 20% that drives 80% of your business, and work on that, delivering the best quality that you can continuously to your customer without crazy increases in pricing. And that would be a huge win for this year, for a lot of our brands as well. So I 100% understand where you're coming from. It's challenging. It's challenging. And that gives us really a chance to dive into our topic of discussion today, which is slightly different, but still kind of on that same role. Talking about embedding the sustainability in sourcing and supply chain operations overall, right? So wanted to first welcome everybody who is watching us live, as well as who are going to watch this recordings later on. Just want to really say thank you for taking the time and spending it with us every a month at the first Tuesday of the month at 11:30 Pacific Standard Time. We're really excited to have you here. Who doesn't know me yet, just wanted to give you a little bit of a background. My name is Ye, or full name is Evgenia Alexandrovna Yushkova. I'm a fashion business consultant and the founder of Yushkova Designs. I help fashion brands and retailers to redesign their supply chains, sourcing strategies, and really build their private label brands and operations to elevate profitability, adaptability, and of course, sustainability is a big part of this as well. And I'd love to really open up our topic of discussion today. Thank you, Dr. Mari, for always being here. Samuel, thank you for being here as well on the call with me. I'd love to give you guys a quick chance to introduce yourself to the group who's watching us live, and then we'll start diving into our discussion today. Samuel, why don't you start by
Sure.
a quick introduction?
Samuel Alexander, I'm the CEO of C2C Fashion and Technology. We're a global fashion and technology ecosystem. We have C2C Collab, which we incubate nanobiotech smart products and utilitarian products. We focus in on smart factories, smart networks, and smart products for the smart cities with IoT. And so we're basically looking at being the bridge between the fashion and the technology industry.
Fantastic. Thank you, Samuel. Dr. Mario?
Love it, love it, love it. Greetings and good vibes. I'm Dr. Mario McCoy, CEO, founder, and taxpayer of Incomparable Eyewear, Watches, and Accessories. We are a premium, eco-conscious, minimalist brand where simplicity is timeless, and we focus on limited release unisex watches and eyewear for the modern minimalist, stationed in Houston, Texas.
Perfect. Welcome. Thank you, Dr. Mario. Well, I'd love to start off by really thinking about what if I would have told you guys that the sustainability strategy, it's actually your risk management plan and your margins protection really engine. But most of your team doesn't know that how to use it a lot of times when we are talking to a lot of our brands. And we are here today to talk about not about the greenwashing type of a fluffy eco marketing wordings, right? About what sustainability is really all about. But we're here to really dig deeper into how you as a leader can really embed sustainability into your operating model to unlock business value. Because today's market, sustainability is no longer an option. It's a strategic movement that is absolutely necessary to have. It's also a long-term game. You don't become sustainable overnight. You have to find the opportunities in areas that you'll be sustainable in and what you're going to play in, and be able to adapt that. And it will take a lot of time to test it, and with trial and errors until you actually get yourself on a path to success. But let's be honest, right? Between greenwashing, raising material costs and fragmented suppliers networks, it can feel impossible to know where to start or where it will actually pay off. We want to use eco-friendly materials and we want to use recyclable products as an example, but that often shoots our costs up as well. And a lot of our clients come to us and say, well, yes, we are trying to be sustainable, but the cost of being sustainable, unfortunately, does not pay off because the customer is not willing to pay for it. And that's a really good challenge that we're all seeing, that we are constantly hearing from our clients. And I'm actually curious because, Dr. Mara, I know you guys are really heavily on sustainability factor. Have you guys also, I'm sure, experienced similar feedback where the cost of being sustainable not always will pay off in the actual price in dollars and margins, well, versus the loyalty of the customer, that what really brings the win, right, when you do being in a sustainable path? Love to hear a little bit more from your actual experience.
We made the shift to really commit to being a premium sustainable brand during the pandemic in 2020. This is after we started. So we put a lot of emphasis on 316L surgical grade, put a lot of emphasis on bioacetate, a lot of different things that help as far as customers having sensitive skin or wrist breaking out, they wear a watch, or they're behind their ears breaking out, they wear glasses, things like that. And a lot of people really didn't gravitate to that. It took a few years to really see the overall customer benefit. It wasn't necessarily about the materials and the switching, because you get a lot of our buyer clientele that aren't really educated about that. It's really more so what's in it for them. So as long as we continue to harp down on that point, they would get it. But the part of not being educated in bridging that particular gap, not necessarily the fault of the consumer, but they just have a particular buyer preference, right? So maybe to making sure that we're very.
Dr. Mario, I think our connection got disconnected because we lost you, froze a little bit. Let's come back to you when your connection gets a little bit better. Samuel, just give me a hands up that you can still hear me, that it's not on my.
Constant thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay,
I can
perfect.
still hear.
Now, but
He
Dr.
came
Mario is
back.
back.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, you got disconnected for a second. You froze.
Oh, I did. I froze.
Yeah, for a second.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. What
No,
was the
no.
last
Just
part
if
that
you
you
can
guys
go
heard?
back to the last 5 seconds of what you were saying, so that we do
Mhm.
not miss your thought.
No problem. So mainly having that constant conversation of growth, of what's in it for the customer, right? Because like we just mentioned, as far as them not being necessarily educated, quote unquote, as far as like what bioacetate does, or the different grades of stainless steel and how it protects their wrists, or their behind their ears, and if they're wearing the eyewear, or the silicone on the actual nose pads, and all those things, and where they come from, and everything being environmentally friendly and all that stuff. Some people just care about how it looks on them, right? So, but this
100%.
is why not compromising on the materials, and having that constant forefront conversation, constant forefront marketing, constant forefront, and just building community as a growing business. Like, those things are super, super, super important. And the more feedback that we got from customers, we did have some people that did leave because our prices had to increase. But just really honing in on our specific ICA, it helped just even more. But the challenge, I will say, definitely is ongoing. But I will say even the pandemic, it definitely helped, because when people were inside, you got to see how beautiful the world was, right? Because it wasn't a lot of gas outside, people couldn't drive, all those things. So really relating it to like real life application certainly helped us as well.
100%. It's really driving the value in the customer's
Mm-hmm.
mind, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
all about the value and the wearability factor as well, that in how that relates to their health and or themselves itself. 100%
Definitely.
agreed. And I'd love to hear from everyone who is actually watching us right now, or will be listening to recordings. You can send your answers later on as well. But what challenges are you facing around your sustainability in your sourcing and supply chain? Are your vendors are actually aligned with your vision? And are internal teams resistant because they think sustainability means slower or more expensive? Or are they actually very adaptable and really, celebrating with you the path towards sustainability? Love to hear from you guys. Feel free to send me comments below as well if you're watching it live, or send me messages after you guys get the recordings. I'd love to hear from you. But let's dig into the advanced level frameworks for turning sustainability into competitive advantage without compromising margin, timelines, or scale. And how would we really do that and far and beyond, which always puts me into starting point of conversation as continuous improvement beyond certifications, right? Which means most brands stop at certified fabrics or seasonal eco collections. But really, sustainability, it's operational and it leaves onto your supply chain decisions. Continuous improvements means creating a system that gets linear, greener, and more efficient with every season. Not a one-time off initiative, but really evolving a process. For example, one of our clients that we've engaged recently, we restructured their raw material procurement process altogether. They started initially from a 90-day cycling to do a rolling of the modular system into local vendors. We cut down by doing that their fabric waste by 22% and then improved their cash flow. Now, when we cutting down their fabric waste, we already automatically becoming more going towards sustainability, because we are now affecting of how do we minimize the waste, which is really one of the main factors in sustainability pathways, is how do we remove waste. And so while they are now on the sustainability road path with this just one small tiny shift, which then translated into many other shifts across all of their procurement processes and supply chain in general. But that did not impact their margin in a negative way. It actually helped them to increase their margin and profitability, because now they were saving on everything that was actually wasted in the previous times. And Samuel, I know that this really speaks close to home, because this is exactly what you guys are doing and always constantly talking about that. I'd love to hear from you how that echoes into not just being sustainable based on the materials that you would use, but really be sustainable and strategic onto how you actually produce the product and what goes into it.
And yeah, I'm certified at the University of Texas in circular economy, and I'm also in another certification now for sustainability. In circular economy, we build life cycle into the product, from the raw materials to the end of the life cycle of the product. Also, we have just finished up a project with IPC, where we set up the global standards for smart products. So all the products that go in will be uniform to where all the chargers and everything fit, and the batteries and things are universal. So we're doing a lot of things like that. And I was in class the other day, and I'll share this with everyone. And it's built into your marketing when you really look at sustainability. And most people probably in your group are too young to remember this, but back in the day when little girls wore flour sack dresses, the flour sacks would change the print every shipment, and the women would wait in line to be able to buy the flour to be able to get the prints on the flour sacks, and that's where little girls ended up wearing flour sack dresses. So that was built into the life cycle of the product, and so that's what we're looking at doing, is building a life cycle into the products.
I love that. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? It's about the life cycle journey of that product, not just the materials that it's truly made from. Because if you are focusing on sustainability as a strategy by using just materials that are sustainable, you most likely will add to your cost. But once you start looking at the circular economy of what you were just mentioning in a life cycle of what happens to that product after it's been created and that's been worn or whatever it is, if there are take back programs that you can then take that product and recycle it into a new product that you potentially create, that helps you to reduce some of the new raw materials investments that you potentially might need, and long term gives you more savings and costs. I mean, that's what we are talking about here, Samuel, right? Am I understanding this correctly with you?
Right, and also on the sustainable fibers, we are doing recycled cottons, and we're doing plastics that we like right now. I have fabrics that we've made from plastic bottles that we recycled. We're taking at our facility here in Austin, which Dr. Morrow might be interested in, but we can do 3D printed glass frames and do it with the recycled plastic polymers. So we've got a lot of things here, and we focus in on fiber optics here at our facility here in Austin. So there's a lot of stuff that we're doing on that end of forest recycling.
I love it. And the 3D printing really speaks close to home. I have another client right now that actually doing reusable cups that are all 3D printed as well. I mean, what a great phenomenal way, not just by printing it from recycled material and it's recyclable, but also they literally have zero waste production, because unless, that coil that actually helps you to 3D print that cup, there's no waste to it. It's really what just goes into the cup is a done deal, which is really helps them to maximize opportunity and the message that they're trying to build is that they have no waste, right? And that helps them to drive it home. And this is really thinking about sustainability. It's really not about idealism. It's really about redesigning how you operate. Some takeaway actions that we often challenge our clients with is to really think about run, sustainability audits across your operational nodes, right? To just not just the product itself, really looking under a microscope, an audit of how much water has been used. For example, if you're dyeing your product, are there waterless dye options that you potentially might want to explore? How much energy is used? How much waste you have in your fabric scraps and your material scraps, and where does that waste actually goes? And we have another client that actually, once they did the audit and they realized of how much wasted material goes after every even already optimized cutting ticket, then they created a product that can actually be created from that waste scrap. So they do a little patched pouches that now is attached to their product that you can buy separately, but all that made is from the scraps that were wasted from that particular cutting ticket. So just thinking about creatively how we can be able to maximize every material that goes into our product on the operational side that can potentially open up some interesting opportunities. Thinking about implementing a supplier scorecard that focuses on water use, energy, and lead time compliances. So that's another really critical aspect that often is underlooked, especially in the smaller to mid-sized brands, because we're too busy focusing on getting the product to our customer that we don't often actually sit there and evaluate on a much deeper level our manufacturer partners and how much they are using some of those critical elements that are also helps us just to tell the sustainable story. Invest in product life management systems, right? As PLM, one of them would be a critical one, to which will allow you to sustainably track the data and really be able to track that data across the vendors and be able to also put KPIs on your vendors that they need to meet a certain particular scores based on what your path towards sustainability is. But sustainable path is not the same for everybody. It's going to be different and will depend on your product and the brand that you are actually creating. We often hear brands that boost their using organic cottons and recycled packaging, but that's not it. This is just scratching the surface. So if you're telling me that you are a sustainable brand and that's all what you do, we would always come back and say that this is not a sustainable brand. You're just using some sustainable materials, which is great to mention in marketing, but it's unfortunately doesn't really help much on cutting out the waste and be able to reduce the pollutions and everything else that are really critical and important when we think about the sustainability itself. Sustainability that really truly moves the needle and requires operational integrations. It's not a marketing function. It's a system-wide commitment to continuous improvement. The most resilient brands we work with is embedding sustainability into infrastructure of their decision-making, down to how they build calendars, structure procurement, and manage their vendor scorecards. And that's really important to have those tools in place in order for you to be able to track your progress towards sustainability and not just say that we are sustainable to the world out there when you truly potentially might not. The biggest margin loss in sustainable fashion often comes from inefficiencies masked by well-meaning of initiatives itself, right? True sustainability comes from, re-engineering the upstream, which would be the trim access steps, cut dead stock through potentially better forecasting and improve data visibility to your vendors. So really being transparent so that then your vendors as well as your customers later on be able to actually see what has been done. Give you one great example for one of our clients where when they came in, they had a lot of dead stock and a lot of overstock, which again downplays towards their sustainability efforts, because all that stock eventually is going to go to landfills. So what is going to happen, what they actually end up doing, is we relooked at all of their forecasting and how they strategically forecasted up to today, and built a new way for them to forecast and logic, that they were now able to actually have less of the dead stock. We actually reduced it by 85%, because we also created them a pull system of a supply chain. That was before tariffs, unfortunately. So then, where they were actually able to pull small shipments out of Asia, instead of doing a one big chunk order every season, now they were able to do it every 2 weeks, where they were bringing in products, which allowed them to really minimize their dead stock overall, because they were producing it to demand of that customer. And anything new they were testing, instead of thousands, they were testing in hundreds of pieces, which was much easier to sell, and then leaves you with almost no dead stock after all. This also includes implementing lean production, demand-driven replenishment models that we just mentioned, and critically really design principles that are all embedded in their SOPs, right? Not just the sourcing better fabrics, but it really goes back into your continuous improvement from the operational side. Thinking about one of the things I really always want to leave kind of the people who are on this call is to think about what are the different things that you guys can do, even after this call, to think about and challenge your teams to be able to see how sustainable you truly are, right? Thinking about what is the percentage of the ESG audited suppliers that you currently have. Thinking about your single point dependencies through the vendors, and where and how things are actually connected. Average rework and return cost, looking at how high is it currently is for you guys, and if there is an opportunity to improve. Thinking about even improving a return rate is already also going towards the path of sustainability, because you're actually removing the partial percentage that actually contributes to overly shipping the product back and forth, as an example, right? Which would be one of them. And of course, how much of that product is actually going to end up in landfills, which this is why the circularity is so important, figuring out how can we create take back programs and have those products to be recycled into something else. Thinking about lead times from the design to delivery, because when we actually think about lead times, they also play a lot of a big role into sustainability factor as well. The faster you can do in more optimal ways, you can do things that are more automated, will also help you to reduce some of the waste. Give you one of the great examples, which makes it super primitive, but it's very effective. We have one client that's came out to us. They still were doing paper patterns and samples, iterations over and over before they actually were able to come up with a style and then adapt it. We transferred them into a 3D modeling, where now they, instead of doing gazillions of this extra work, which then again, it all contributes to the waste, they now can 3D model their products, and then based on that, select exactly what they need, and they will go into production, which there's no more paper patterns that existed in their company anymore, which helped them to also contribute to their sustainability path of minimizing waste, because that's what they wanted to do. And then also the percentage of recoverable materials per SKU that you are able to recover back potentially from your take back programs, as an example. Thinking about really the sustainable factor integration into your processes is going to be the key. And that's going to be what's going to be really important to drive the success to your sustainability. Dr. Mara, do you guys also do anything operationally from the operational side that helps you guys to tell your sustainable story?
Yes, everything operational. You mentioned a great point as far as like paper goods and things of that nature. We really pay attention to everything. We're aiming to get carbon neutral certified. So all of the steps that we take internally, from packaging to, like you just mentioned as well, working with specific manufacturers that have specific certifications that steer well into sustainability and being in that area of certification. And side note, Samuel, I did see my information as well. We definitely have to connect on that as well. I'm definitely looking to get better with that too. But being a small and lean team, we really pay attention from everything to the materials to the paper to everything just in house, because we're definitely a minimalist brand. We don't like to have anything with extra waste, and that starts internally because we're accountable for that before we can even put anything externally to our customers and even externally to our manufacturers, and just building relationships. We have a 28-point checklist when it comes to everything sustainability from internal to external.
I love that. And I'm assuming you guys are also sharing that to your customers and the journey that you guys are doing and tracking it to be able to really show the results. I love that. Mary, thank you for sending your question on our live stream. I really appreciate it. Her question is, how do I push my continuous improvement when our teams is already stretched thin? That's a very common pitfall and as well as challenge for many of our brands. Before I give my answer to Samuel, do you want to help Mary answer Mary's question, if from your perspective?
Right. Would you repeat the question?
Yes, she's asking, how do I push a continuous improvement where our teams are already stretched thin?
There's a lot of outsourcing that you can do to offset some of your lack of full-time people. And I focus on more of outsourcing than I do having full-time people, because of the projects that we in are always so unique and we're having to bring in different people. So my suggestion would be outsourcing.
Perfect. That's one great example. Thank you, Samuel. And really my advice would be is don't try to fix everything at once, right? Pick a single process and then say really in post-production as an example, or QC, or a lab dip approvals could be another one, which actually, believe it or not, and just lab dip approvals, there's a lot of waste that's happening as well, right there and then. And really think about maybe running a Kaizen sprint. It doesn't mean that you have to redesign everything from scratch and take months to implement. Kaizen is the beauty of it, that you can actually get together with a group of team from your organization, making sure that they're not just the heads, but also have the process users of that particular process that you're trying to improve or look into how can you make it more sustainable. It probably will take you anywhere between 5 to 7 hours, so probably let's say a day, where you would sit down and really lay everything out, lay out all the different inputs that are going into your process and outputs, and figuring out how you can mainstream that. And of course, if you're trying to optimize it for sustainability, look at your production of waste, that particular process that potentially captures, or looking at what else you can be able to optimize to make that particular process more, not only faster and optimal, but as well as that will produce less waste and helps you to contribute to your sustainability. Fix that and then implement that portion, let it run to be able to see the results of it, measure the results if they're actually impactful enough for you to be able to continue to focus on that. And maybe try different sections of your processes to find the nuggets that will be meaningful enough to really spend time and outsource and probably bring an outsourced team to help you really optimize it in a big way, so that at least, but they will know that this will bring you the maximum impact towards your goal. So 100% agree with Samuel, what you said. And I think that hopefully, Mary, that she just gave you thumbs up, so that helped her answer the questions. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. One of the myths I really often see, that ethical sourcing equals expensive sourcing. But the smart sustainability, it's also a smart economics, if you think about it. We help private label brands transition from tier 1 suppliers in China in a vertical integrated kind of meal dyeing cut operating in Vietnam, as an example. And that allows us to cost per unit to drop by 18%, where we actually bringing in the raw potential materials that are yarns that are not available anywhere else into Vietnam, and actually have them do the cutting and assembling and everything else. And often that actually becomes much more cheaper. But the reason we often do that, because the factories that we work in Vietnam that are actually more geared towards sustainability. They are being certified and being tracking to their output of waste, output of carbon footprint, output, especially in terms of the water dyeing. We work with a Vietnam factory, Mill Dye House, that actually does waterless dyeing. And that's a huge factor for us as well. And of course, we transitioned that to a lot of our clients as well. Thinking about ethical suppliers that really run on a clear and more efficient operations. Another really great blank supplier that we have in the United States called Lane 7. I love working with them. And the reason I do is because that's their mission. They not just create product from recycled plastic and monitor how many bottles they've saved and everything else, but they actually constantly challenge their factories to make sure that they look at their water waste, their water contamination, how much energy they use, and that really helps to translate to a lot of our clients who use their product. And this is the types of relationship we're talking about, to really thinking about how do we transition from potentially some of those really large factories that not necessarily maybe focusing on that, but because they're focusing on producing volume, but really shifting into some of maybe tier 2 and 3 factories, and that are able to actually deliver the results from towards the sustainability for us. Dr. Mari, I know you guys mentioned a lot about that shift as well between the China and Italy. Did you find that Italy has more sustainable operations versus China, or do you feel like they are more equally the same on your guys' end?
A few years ago, it was definitely more Italy. As far as the ease of access for certifications and the more so in your face knowledge of the materials that they use and how they're beneficial to the customer, as far as like the costs outlays and everything of that nature. China has definitely caught up, just in the eyewear space and the accessory space, as far as the materials that they use. As far as the overall like certification aspect, you do have to do some digging. Again, you do have to make sure that your values sets are aligned, and you want to check and see how long certain companies have been open, or certain factories have been open, and how they're able to successfully implement that into their product, right? But Italy, they're more so in the eyewear space and in the clothing space as well. There, I would say, Vietnam too, that we worked with as far as particular clothing. Like they're definitely well versed because they work with major brands like Banana Republic and other spaces like that. And seeing just how those conversations work. One thing that I will point out, especially since we're talking about just China and Italy, a lot of our business in Italy, they will already vet you before doing business with you to see if you're a good fit, for them. Like you mentioned, a good point as far as, you're not really a sustainable brand if all you sell is a sustainable product. Like you have to really like embed it into your company and show your customers what they're doing. And manufacturers, they look at that, because if they find out that you're not who you say you are in that aspect, and another company finds out, they might pull their contract that they work with you in the future, or just pull whatever business that they work with you in the future, excuse me, and that can hurt them. So
Great.
they make sure to definitely do their due diligence, which is good for both parties.
Agreed, because they have to be able to sustain their reputation as well.
Hmm.
Absolutely, 100%. Which that takes me to really thinking about, as a takeaways of action plans, is really to think about diversifying your suppliers based on to include mid-size, ethical focused factories with automation capabilities. So one of the big denominator, right, in between of how do you become more efficient, but as well as sustainable from the operational side, it's the automation factors, right? What are the automations potentially are in place that allows you to bypass extra sampling, bypass extra pattern making, bypass extra back and forth? So whatever it is, all that contributes towards the sustainability factor. Thinking about build multi-seasonal really visibility with the strategic partners, right? Not just to negotiate season by season and focus on price, but really focus on the value that they will bring to your customer long term over time. Because when we focus so much just per one season, we might not see the benefits of when we start to look at it as a long-term savings or a long-term investment into bringing more value to your customer. Thinking about using the MOQ leverage to align sustainability upgrades with businesses incentives, where there is a potentially ethical and sustainable suppliers that always could be potentially more expensive. But if you start thinking about, again, long-term relationship and putting in how much potentially raw materials that we would need to invest in and hold those goods, so we could be able to actually bring them into more sustainable pathways, or invest in some sort of a machinery, as an example, if that's the case, in order for us to be able to make it more sustainable. Those are great investments that we wanted to look at over time. If you just focus on them seasonally, it will not make sense. But if you look at strategically over a period of time, a lot of those investments make a lot of sense to do. And having those conversations and partnerships with the factories is critical. And Samuel, I know this is exactly your wheelhouse, because you guys are on the manufacturing side. And I'm sure I'd love to hear, like, do you guys have vendors who are actually, brands who are coming in and trying to partner with you to come up with some of those solutions that can help them to become more sustainable?
It's really not that much of a topic with most of the vendors that we have now, because we're more focused in on smart products
Okay.
and being able to integrate those products, and also, getting connectivity on the connectors. That's one of our biggest issues now, is how to keep the connectors connected once you wash the product. So that's, more where we're focused in on than the sustainable part. And as you already know, we're focused in on hemp as our fiber that we've reshored with. And it's not easy reshoring. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not easy. And it's going to take more than a few years to do it. So we may as well get ready for this trip. It's going to be a journey.
It's going to be a journey, but the fact that you guys are doing it and thinking about, right, is just to think even about what fibers that we could use that are different from out there that can actually help us to be able to win this in long term, which is a
Well,
huge investment on your side. And I know you work closely with government to be able to get this going.
what you were speaking of earlier is the water. The biggest issue that we're going to have for sustainability is the lack of water. And that's one of the things hemp does, is on an acre of land, you can produce 4 times more product than you can with cotton on a fourth of the water. And then, so, and then you were talking earlier about the sustainable dyeing. There are dyeing facilities called infusion, which you can actually open the fiber without water and insert the dye and lock it, and you can't even wash it out. So there's a lot of new technologies that are coming out that will help you to become sustainable. And I think that the biggest confusion a lot of people have, and I'm having to learn it also, is the difference between a circular economy and sustainability.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. 100%. Thank you. That's a really great feedback. We have another comment that just came in as a question. How do I find truly ethical partners and avoid kind of a greenwashing as aspect of it? You can really try, you cannot rely on just a certification alone. So, and that's what typically we see when we vent for the vendors, right? The first thing that they will do is they will say, hey, well, I have a certificate of this, certificate of that. But your goal is really to vet their labor practices and actual capacity. Ask who is doing the compliance audits, whether it's independent or in-house. You would usually want the ones that would be independent, because then you would get a really true story more often than you would get from the in-house auditing type of a thing. Right? Tour virtually, which if you're not able to do it in person, but if you can do it in person, highly recommend to actually tour those factories, and don't just go to their office and sit in the showroom. Actually go on the floor. You will be very surprised the story that it will tell you once you actually walk into those dye houses, or once you walk into the sewing factories and facilities and walk the floors. You're going to see if everything is falling on the floors and all those scraps are getting swept up and going into the garbage trash, but yet they're saying that they're committed to minimize waste, that this might not be the true story. So you really want to look under a microscope and actually seeing yourself in seeing them in action will help you to really identify what actually is truly happening behind the closed doors. Use their proprietary supplier venting process, really, that includes interviewing flow managers. That's another really great one. Do it anonymously, but talk to their flow managers to really understand what's really going on behind the scenes. And really evaluating their production efficiency, not just the ethics itself. That tells us a lot about how the factory actually runs and operates. So those are the little things that you can do outside of just asking for their certification that help you hopefully vent the partners and be able to find good partners that you can work towards your sustainability path. A lot of times I'm asked, well, how long does it actually takes a brand to go from 0 to about 100% sustainable? I always say there's no such a thing 100% sustainable. So it's always a continuous improvement that happens over the course of years. And you'll get close to 100%, but there's always going to be something new that will come up that you will potentially might want to, again, re-engage and then see how that interjects into your journey. But typically, and Samuel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but typically we're seeing brands going from, if they're just starting on the sustainable path, we probably could say where they're going to start seeing results and actually can claim the results within about 3 to 5 years. So this is not a fast, quick thing that you can do overnight. This does take time, and it does take planning, and of course allocating budgets for it as well to make sure that you'll be able to sustain your path towards sustainability and obtain needed certifications once you are able to actually prove that you were able to achieve those results. Samuel, is that what you guys are typically seeing, or are you guys seeing any different lead times for the brands?
What we're finding is AI will be an aid to us in being able to verify sustainability on a lot of the products, and that's where your databases will start showing up for the certifications of the factories and those type areas. And once you have a history out there, then AI can pull that data for you. So
correct. But
yeah.
what you brought up a really good point is that it's about collecting data. And so you need to make sure that you also, once you create a sustainable path, is that you create a hierarchy of data that you need to collect on. Because if you don't have that, you're running it blind and you're just making blind statements. We need to make sure that when you are creating your sustainable path, it's all measurable, something that you'll be able to measure for and collect data over time. To Samuel's point, then you could be able to have AI to help you analyze that data and be able to actually get you to the actual result that you potentially might need and help you pivot where needed. But the initial collection of data is critical. And what we're seeing a lot of brands that come to us with their supply chain is that they collect very little data to no data at all, because they all hyper focus on data that helps them sell the product, but not the data that actually helps them to manufacture it efficiently and more on the lean principles. We see that a lot in automotive. We do not see a lot of that in apparel factories just yet. But it's definitely coming, and we're working all towards it. I'd love to just have a few minutes of last minute thoughts. And Dr. Mara and Samuel, if you guys want to share any last minute thoughts before we close our session today, it's always a pleasure. I will be also offering my time, that if you guys want to book time to kind of work as a discovery to see where you guys are, feel free to reach out. We will drop the link to my calendar below. It's absolutely free. I'm happy to hear from you guys. We will also be sharing a sustainable guide for executives that can help you guys think about some of the takeaway actions that we just talked about today and some more. So if you are interested, just drop a comment below that you're interested in it. We'll send you the guide as well. But just for the last minute thoughts, Dr. Samuel, Samuel,
Sure.
do you want to
Sure. Everybody should take a look at the new standards that California have implemented. And that's the first step, that understanding where we're headed to with the sustainability and verification of sustainability. So just take a look at those laws, because it's a part of this, being able to verify the life cycle of your product. And that's going to be a key thing for your sustainability going forward. And California's already implemented those laws. So take a look at that, and you can Google it and pull it up.
I love that. And you're right, California is always kind of ahead in that sense, right? with being able to really see what they're requiring so that you could be able to see how you can integrate that into your long-term game. Absolutely. Great comment. Thank you, Samuel. Dr. Mario, any last minute thoughts?
No problem. That's a great point, Samuel. Appreciate that. Just regarding everything, just with California. I'm a graduate of USC, so being very much so cognizant of everything down the pipeline with sustainability in California and accountability with that. That's great. Um, Ask questions from an operational standpoint. You mentioned a great point earlier. It's more important than just checking certifications and being on a showroom floor. It's actually really like digging into the crates before you really decide to partner with specific manufacturers, to see one, if they have your best interests in heart as a brand, as a company, as an aspiring company, no matter where you're at in your life cycle stage as building, as a space to be committed to sustainability and just being eco conscious. And like you said previously, take it one step at a time. You cannot skip steps with this. You have to just really focus on specific areas where you can control it and really be authentic. And like I said, I can't stress it enough. Just ask a lot of open-ended questions. Um, Take a lot of notes and really be committed to building the area of sustainability just with your team, because you're able to see that the longevity that will make people really respect what you're building as a brand builder, as a CEO, as a buyer, as a seller. Like all of those areas, they all play a role in sustainability and longevity. So that would be my main thing.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. I'm really happy that you guys are on this call. It's always a pleasure to have this open discussion with everyone. Thank you. I will see you guys next month. It's again first Tuesday of the month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're curious about the topic we're going to discuss, please check out our LinkedIn page at Yushkova Design. We always publish what the next topic of the month will be. It's always different, as we're trying to really learn and share our own insights about all the different things that we need to face as fashion business owners and brand owners as well. Thanks,
Outstanding.
everybody. Have a beautiful rest of the month.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thank you.